all lined up against the right tackle. Pressure from the quarterbacks, kind of the quarterback's left, but Mond had opened up to throw it left. So pressure right in Mond. Ball goes out of bounds. Next play, handoff. Drake comes flying down the line of scrimmage. Did you see that tackle? Like just leaps and bear hugs and takes down the running back. Yeah. TFL. Next snap, pressure right in Kellen Mond's face again, throwing left, and that was the ball. He had pressure from the back too. It wasn't just Drake Jackson. The pick? But that was the pick. It was bam, bam, bam. Drake Jackson came in and immediately changed the game. And considering, remember last week he was really good in the preseason game. Left shoulder injury. Oh no. He was fine, and he's really good.
And even he said after the game, he told them, like, can I come back? And they held him out. But it did look scary when his arm was kind of dangling. He's clearly fine. He is, I feel more and more confident every time I watch him. The Niners got really lucky. It's just, you find receivers, running backs, linebackers, tight ends. There are a lot of random positions that like, yeah, I got this guy picked, 78. You're like, damn, but there are not like, where'd you get this pass rusher? Third. Where'd you get Trent Williams or Lane Johnson? Second, fourth? I mean, now you can find guys for character stuff sometimes in like 30 to 50 range. But if I told you the Niners were going to make the NFC Championship game and they don't have their first round pick because of Trey Lance, and then their second round pick because they had such, their record wasn't that great, but because they won playoff games, they're picking fourth to last and end up with a guy who within a year is going to be their starting defensive end. And this year is going to give them, I think, immediately week one. What would you put his over-under snap counts against the Bears? 10.5? Does that feel high?
No, that doesn't feel high. I think he's going to play a lot.
Yeah.
So, honestly, I might go over 10.5.
So if I told you they were going to, at the last pick of the second round, before the draft started, they're going to get a pass rusher who is not only going to be super talented, but is going to immediately play on this defensive line. You'd be like, damn, what happened? The guy get arrested or something? Like it's just not a position that you're supposed to get right there. Because when you look at the draft, remember all this whole draft, DJ kept saying D lineman, they're all going to fly off. And he didn't. And obviously they benefited from everything that went on, but you don't need to be Bill Polian here to just watch him take some snaps. And Kinlaw falls under this going like, that's NFL talent. Right. And this goes back to your Solomon Thomas thing. You watch Solomon play, and I would put Cleveland here too, just because they were top 5 picks and everyone, you just stare at them and you're just like, what's going on here? Like where's some moves, you watch a good pass rusher within 2 snaps, like TJ Watt. I mean, shit, you can't touch him. And you knew it right away. Or all these pass rushers that are good around the league. It just kind of jumps out. Remember Micah Parsons last year? Like after like 2 games, like Jesus Christ, what the hell is this?
Yeah,
it's just there's a speed off the edge, and this guy, the explosive nature of this guy, and you and I walk by him. He has a long way to go of like kind of them molding his body. I would imagine. I would say this is like his Mac Jones season, where he kind of had a little belly. I would remember
he's adding weight, or is he?
Yeah, he's cut weight. Now you're adding weight. But I still think they're trying to – I would imagine his body looks a little more cut up next year.
Yeah.
Well, they don't have a choice this year, right? I mean, they didn't have his off season was all messed up because of the travel and everything. And then once OTA
You mean just because he was getting ready for the draft?
Yeah, he was dropping weight, and then they want to add weight. And it's just kind of – you're just expediting everything just to get ready for the season, where in the off season, it's like, well, we'll cut this food out. We'll add this weight training. I think the guy's a fucking monster, bro. I mean, I think, like Kinlaw to me is just a huge mass. I don't know like how sweet his like pass rush moves are. It's just hard when you're that big. Most guys aren't great. This guy's kind of just has a natural feel kind of coming off the edge. He does. And he did watch him in college. It was like,
yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people that are listening to this, a lot of these, if you're a Niner fan, definitely if you're listening to this on the West Coast, you just stumbled upon USC games the last several years. He just jumped out. He was their most talented player, I would say, the last couple of years, right? I mean, I had someone text me before the weight stuff happened this year. There were some talks of him potentially being like a top 15 pick if he put it all together and like he had a really good season. And obviously the season just got derailed.
He's just
I wouldn't say he was like Kayvon level hype, but
No,
He
was
would have been in the next tier of just in NFL circles of just hype on a pass rusher. I'm not saying media wise. I'm just saying in NFL circles that were really, you were going to SC to see him first and foremost this year.
Yeah.
I would guess for all the guys in like the top 50 or 60 prospects, and I bet he was on a lot of top 50 boards, right? You know, just other teams. If you take like a offensive tackle and like a linebacker, you know, you just might not take that position. He was probably one of the more polarizing guys in draft meetings all over the country for a guy that was going to go in the top, 2.5 rounds, right? Of just arguments, people thinking like, what's his deal? A lot of unknowns, just a lot of discussion in the draft room on him specifically for a guy is getting drafted, relatively early on sometime on the second day, and plays a position that every team needs. That's the other thing, right?
He maybe everyone fits in this category, but he's definitely in the category of, oh, this is so obvious. It makes so much sense. Like I've talked to a couple people who were at USC with him last year, and it was just a lot of the same kind of the harmless, not totally locked in, other things, other distractions around him, but nothing crazy. Just what kind of happens at an undisciplined kind of program with no direction, where it kind of feels like everybody's just out for themselves, and not because they're selfish necessarily, but it's just there's nothing you're really fighting for. The coach gets fired during the year, you're terrible. No one's really maximizing their potential. Coaches, I would imagine, everyone starts worrying about where's my next job. But it's the kind of stuff that in hindsight you're like, God, I mean, it makes so much sense to bet on a guy if you have a stable organization that did not reach his potential. But it's not like he didn't reach his potential. Like if you play for Chris Kasarik and don't reach your potential, then that's a real thing.
Yeah.
Right. But in hindsight, it's so obvious that Drake Jackson was a valuable pick. But here's the other thing. I do understand at the same time why he doesn't go in the first round, right? Like guys
that's not what I'm for sure.
I know you're not, right? Yeah. But we hadn't even talked about this part of it. It makes sense, even though the concerns about him weren't that serious. No one wants to draft anybody in the first round that has any questions. I mean, you would know better. Like,
yeah. And the guys that did, I think some of the, like, I know Georgia had a guy with some questions. I think it was one of the dudes the Packers drafted.
Dean, that guy?
No,
early, higher draft.
I'm talking. I think it was the guy they took 28th. Might have been their second pick. Who they took a guy from Georgia in the first round that a lot of people said had some character concerns and just some off the field concerns. But guess what? He fucking played at Georgia, dominated, started. So it was like, well, turn on the tape. Like part of it was like, is Drake, you could probably watch the right game with him. Like you watch Georgia, everyone was kicking ass every single snap.
Yeah. And
I think going back to what I said is the value you can get in a program kind of in flux, I would guess, and I was told this, like Talanoa Hufanga rose above all the chaos at USC. I don't know anything about his character write-up beside what I saw in Hard Knocks. I would be shocked if Amon-Ra St. Brown was not in the same category.
Well, it's funny you say that because I was talking to somebody
I know nothing about him besides obviously I heard his name watching SC games.
So I was talking to somebody today who was at SC, and I was like, I said what you said to him. I was like, I told him John and I were watching Hard Knocks, and John said, Amon-Ra St. Brown, serious as a heart attack. And the guy's like, yep, that's him. All business.
Yeah.
All business.
So it's like those two guys, for example, right? St. Brown and Hufanga, 4th round pick, 6th round pick. If those guys had Drake's talent at their given positions and had their own mindset like Talanoa has and like St. Brown has, they are locked first round pick. And that's what makes, I think, the draft so intriguing for NFL people. And it's what us on the outside don't always know. Like if you're a USC fan, unless you're like really deep into the woods and watching like interviews, you would just see St. Brown being productive and you'd like him as a player, but you don't truly know. Like I thought the same thing about Juju. And then like, as he got to the pros, you really kind of learned about his personality. As I get to the pros, I learned about this guy's personality. I'm like, I fucking love this guy, St. Brown. I love Hufanga. But I understand why Hufanga, given his measurables and his speed and tweener position, doesn't get drafted. But I also understand why Drake Jackson goes way above those guys. Those guys had 0 question marks beside like speed and size. Drake's only question marks were like, is he mature enough? Right? No one's like, yeah, he can bend the edge, man. He's powerful. He can stop the run. He can do everything you're looking for. Could he play 3-4? Yep. He could be a stand-up linebacker. Could he play a 4-3? Yep. Easy. No problem. It was like plug and play him into every defense, and he goes way higher than these guys. And that's, I think, what truly, like from a geeky, GM, like what makes putting teams together so important. And this goes back to, like, you need Hufungas. Like, you got to have some Hufungas on the team. And the Niners, luckily, like, Jimmy Ward's the same way. Like, some of their better players, Kittle. I mean, they got high-level players that are like that too. But you also need just to take some chances on Drake. And ideally, if you have the perfect kind of semblance of a serious team, which the Niners clearly have, you can take some of these. And I think the Packers view it the same way, right? Like, we have an infrastructure here of some guys, Rodgers, Bakhtiari, Kenny Clark, some guys like we can handle the guy from Georgia with some question marks. Like, he's sitting next to Kenny Clark every day in the meetings. I would be shocked if Gutekunst, because I heard some people like, yeah, we never would have drafted the dudes the Packers took. And I bet Gutekunst would be like, well, he's sitting next to fucking Kenny Clark every day. You think he's fucking around? Because I'll promise you, he won't be. Because Kenny Clark makes $17 million a year. He's one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league, and he's serious as a heart attack. He'll make sure this guy's in the straight and narrow. And the Niners would say, you think this guy's going to screw around with Eric Armstead and Nick Bosa in the room? And Chris in the room? And the answer is probably not. Yeah. Who, like, tonight, Chris is sick, and he's just there coaching, like, seamless transition.
I don't think it'd be crazy for Drake Jackson to have more sacks than Omenahu. Like, we did a thing about Omenahu the other day. But if you told me he was like third or fourth on the team in sacks this year, Drake Jackson, I don't think I'd be surprised by that.
I just can't get over how many sweet players Clay Helton had over the years. I like a lot of his players.
John, he's got 3 starting quarterbacks in other Power 5 schools. He's got Ole Miss, he's got Pitt, he's got West Virginia. All their starting quarterbacks are USC guys.
I actually think the win-loss record probably won't age well, but like when you just look back individually, you'd be like, well, he's got this starting quarterback, he's got this guy, you see Drake Jackson's balling, you see guy
Michael Pittman, Amon-Ra.
Amon-Ra had 90 catches last year in the NFL. 90.
How many did Michael Pittman have? He had more than you thought, I bet. I bet he had more than you think.
And wasn't he banged up too? Like, here's what Michael Pittman's going to have this year. 98 with Matt Ice. Like,
he had 88 catches last year. Michael Pittman.
So he had 2 guys that amounted for almost 180 catches
and 6 touchdowns. How many yards and touchdowns was Amon-Ra?
Well, he had 5 and he ran one in, so he had 6.
So 12 touchdowns. Was he over 1,000 yards receiving?
912.
Okay.
90 catches. That's a lot of production.
912. 12. They 2 of them, they came up just shy of 2,000 yards receiving together.